Harold. So I know we just had lunch, and so everybody's probably still digesting and still thinking a little bit of what we're going to be covering. And so what I'd like to do is start off with a little icebreaker. So what we're going to do is have you guys pull out your cell phones, and we're going to start this Kahoot. So those that are joining us online can do this as well. So pull out your cell phone, and you're going to go to kahoot.it. There'll also be a QR code that'll pop up here real fast, and you should be able to scan that as well. So there's the QR code, or you can go to kahoot.it, and you're going to type in this number, so 4314993. Or if you want to use that QR code, go ahead and scan that code, and we're going to do a little quiz. We already got people signing in, great. And how many people do we have online?
Looks like we currently have 49.
Okay, 49 online, great. So we'll wait till we get a few more people. And if you can, try to make your nicknames appropriate. I was running into, there's a few things that might not be appropriate. We'll wait another minute or so. Okay, we've got Water Lover, Ninja, the winner, Andy Dad. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I believe you can still join after we get started, so feel free to keep on working on it if you are. We're going to get this started with a really important. Go ahead and type in your answer. For those that are still trying to join us, kahoot.it, game pin is at the bottom. I know this is a hard one. Some people, they can't choose. There's too many good books, too many good movies. Some people just make it look easy, right? Like, oh, come on. Maybe you can use the voice to text. Got about 36 seconds left. I think we're waiting on like maybe one or two more people. All right, so let's go ahead and skip ahead and let's see what you guys got. So we got Yellowstone, so that's a big popular TV show right now. Ted Lasso, you hear about that. Lord of the Rings, Friends, some of the other bigger ones. Harry Potter, Fablehaven is a book. Indiana Jones series, Dresden book series, Star Wars. So Star Wars, the original trilogy, that's actually my favorite movies. The newer ones, not so much, but definitely the older ones. Four Feathers, I think that's the one about being honorable, not running away from war. Elf, Witness, Da Vinci Code, Jack Ryan. What About Bob? Great one. Okay, now the next question. So one more question. So what type of construction projects are you involved in? So it can be one word answer, it could be more. So feel free. You only have a minute for this one, so you need to type a little bit faster. What kind of construction projects are you involved in? Okay, about 10 seconds left, 15 seconds left. BNR basins, infrastructure, none. Okay. Sewer plant, all. Sewer tank lines, water lines, remodels, all of them. Sewer, street, city parks, landscape, road, water. Okay, so that's good to know. We might not talk about your specific type of construction project, but hopefully you'll be able to glean some of the things just in general safety and in construction. And we'll come back to doing a Kahoot at the end, so we'll do a quiz at the very end. Okay, so the objectives of this is that by the end, you're hopefully supposed to understand the responsibilities of management, supervisors, employees as it relates to employee safety, okay? You should be able to discuss what a pre-task plan is and what are the major steps of it. You should also know what to look for in a safety inspection if you're tasked or if you're having somebody go out and inspect construction sites. What are some of the things we should be looking at? What are the main focus for? And then you should be able to choose the right controls for those hazards. So why is this important? You know, as you know, if you have individuals that go out on the construction sites, they can be very, very dangerous. In 2020, we had a lot of deaths, a lot of roadway deaths, but still in construction, we had the majority of the deaths in workplace injuries, okay? So over 1,000 workers were killed in 2020 in a construction site. So let's talk about our responsibilities as an organization, as supervisors, as employees, and you know how that relates to protecting our employees to keep them safe. So as an organization, we have a responsibility and we should be assigning responsibility and safety responsibilities to really everybody in the organization, okay? So all workers should be involved. There shouldn't just be one safety guy or one risk guy. It should be everybody should have some sort of responsibilities. Supervisors should be given that responsibility and should actually you know how to do it. Sometimes we give them a responsibility, but not the training. And so it's important that we do that so that they know exactly what they're assigned to do. If somebody gets hurt, you know, who are they supposed to report to? What are the things we should be looking for on job sites to protect our workers? If we have temporary workers, they need to be assigned responsibility as well. They should be able to look out and know what they're looking for as far as hazards. And as during this presentation, if you guys have stories or have experiences or have questions, please feel free to speak up. Okay, this is kind of an open discussion, not just me. So as an employer, as far as OSHA is concerned, you're supposed to have a workplace that's free of recognized hazards. So not just the rules and the laws that we're supposed to be following, also supposed to be following if we had injuries in the past where people have gotten hurt, that's a recognized hazard, right? So we know we should be protecting our employees against that in the future. If you have user manuals, as far as like your equipment manuals, it'll say, hey, do not do this, right? If you're using a chainsaw, for instance, it'll tell you not to put the chainsaw in between your legs when you start it up, because somebody somewhere did that and hurt their employee or hurt themselves, right? And then they sued the manufacturer, and now that's a recognized hazard. So as a organization and employer, we should be able to make sure that we're focusing on those types of things, okay? They're the recognized hazards. We should be complying with state and federal regulations, obviously. We need to be providing required training, okay? So if we're having individuals go out on construction sites, they need to have some sorts of training, right? Fall protection is a big one. Equipment training. If they're operating forklifts, skid steers, heavy equipment, there's supposed to be some training involved, and you're supposed to record that. If they're working around things like asbestos, or if they're using respirators as part of their job, that's going to require a medical exam, and we're required as employers to provide that for our employees, and they're supposed to have access to those records. And then, you know, as you know, it's kind of the default as far as controls go is PPE, or personal protective equipment. As an employer, we're supposed to provide that to our employees, make sure they're protecting themselves. All right, as far as supervisors go, they need to have some responsibilities, right? And they need to know what these responsibilities are. They are the primary source of, or responsible for their employees. So if somebody gets hurt, it's actually the supervisor. They're responsible for their direct safety. So do they know this when they're put up as a supervisor? Do they understand that they are responsible for whoever they're put in charge of? Okay. They're usually supposed to be in charge of responding to injuries. So if somebody gets injured at work, They're the ones that's supposed to either take them to the hospital or make sure that HR is notified. They should also be trying to do a accident or incident investigation, right? Because they're the ones, the frontline leaders that are there, they know what's going on. Hopefully they can take some pictures and try to figure out why that incident did occur. They should also be responsible for recognizing and controlling those hazards. So they have the primary responsibility to be looking around. Hey, we noticed something's wrong here. There's a piece of wood or there's a fall hazard. Let's get that fixed so our employees don't get injured. The employees, they also have some responsibilities, and we need to make sure they understand what those responsibilities are. So they need to report injuries. So how many here have had somebody get hurt and they find out about it like a week later? Does that happen like all the time, right? Because we're so siloed a lot of times in these organizations. And when I worked up at USU, I would always be trying to harp on people, okay, report it same day, same shift if we can, right? But it was very difficult to get that information out sometimes to the smaller departments. But they are responsible for notifying you that it happens. They're supposed to go to a designated provider. Sometimes employees will actually go to just whoever their doctor is, you know, and they'll get all sorts of restrictions, or they'll have 2 weeks off. They're supposed to go by law. They're supposed to go to whoever you have designated as a designated provider, a medical provider first. And then afterwards, they can pick whoever they want. So they need to know this information though. So a lot of employees don't even know what workers' comp is, don't know that it's even a thing. So we need to make sure that we're letting them know about that. We also need to give them the tools for hazard recognition so they can actually identify, oh, hey, this is a hazard. This is something I need to do to prevent it through controls. They should be complying with the standards as well. If they're not complying with the standards, you know, that's something you could write them up for, right? If they're not following those standards. We can't write people up for getting hurt, but we can definitely write them up for not following our procedures and standards. They should be participating in training. They should be paying attention, not playing on their phones, right? And understand that training. A lot of times I recommend when you're doing your sign-in sheet, put an asterisk on there that say, hey, you signing this form means that you're understanding you're going to follow these procedures that we're covering in the safety training, so that they understand, like, hey, this is a big deal. This is a legal document. If something happens and OSHA comes and does an investigation, you know, you can show like, hey, they signed this form, they took the training, they knew that they were supposed to follow these procedures. Wearing personal protective equipment, that's another one of their responsibilities, right? And as we go out on the job site, if they're not wearing it, you know, that's something that's low-hanging fruit, right? We can look for when we're doing investigating our employees. So controls, as a lot of you know, and probably our risk managers, you know that there's a lot of different controls that we're looking at, and some controls are better than others, right? And so this is called the hierarchy of controls. You've probably seen it before. Sometimes it's shown as a pyramid or upside down pyramid. And as you'll notice, the most effective controls are the ones on the top, okay? These are the ones that we should be focusing on first when we're looking at controls, okay? So elimination is the most effective. And then at the very, very bottom is PPE. And as organizations, a lot of times when we're looking at construction hazards or other types of hazards, the default is kind of PPE, right? Which is the least effective. And sometimes, you know, it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper initially, but think about all the years we're having to pay for PPE. That can get really costly. Whereas maybe elimination or substitution might be more expensive up front. It's going to be more cost effective down the road. Okay, so those are things to look at. We're going to talk about each of these in some detail, but why do you think PPE is the least effective? For those that are here in person, you can just shout it out. Why do you think PPE is the least effective out of all the types of controls?
Gives a sense of security that may not exist.
Okay, so you're saying it gives us a sense of security that might not exist. Okay, great. Any other reasons why this is the least effective? Yes, sir.
I've actually been hurt twice on the job site because of the failure of PPE.
Okay, so he's been injured twice because of failure of PPE. And so when we wear PPE, we're not removing the hazard. The hazard still exists. All it is a barrier, right? And there's user error. We could forget it. We might not put it on correctly. And so it really is the least effective. If we eliminated the hazard, or if we can put engineering controls, we could put a barrier guarding, It's going to protect our employees. So they don't have to think about it. With PPE, you always have to remember to put it on, right? And so it really is the least effective. And then we have to pay for it ongoing, and right. And so sometimes people just won't put it on because it inhibits their work, fogs their glasses fog up, or they don't want to put on the mask because it makes them feel hot, right? So if we can look at these other types of controls, that's where we want to start first. And then if that's not really feasible, then we want to go down the line, right? And then PPE is just the last control that we want to do. So looking at just a few examples of elimination or substitution as far as construction goes. Types of equipment, if we can have a safer piece of equipment. So ladder always comes to mind. Ladders are very dangerous pieces of equipment. So if we can substitute it or eliminate it with something else like an aerial lift, scaffolding, or something else that we could use. As far as heat goes, substitute the hours so that we're working at different times of the day. So there's not so much heat, right? We work in the cooler hours. That's kind of an administrative control as well, but so that's an example. Another example is chemicals. Maybe we have certain chemicals that we're using, but they're really hazardous. Is there something that we could find that might be less hazardous? Okay, sometimes it's not feasible, so we have to go to the next level. This is a video that shows a good example of what we could do to prevent hazard with ladders and how we could substitute ladder usage. And hopefully the sound works here. Well, it's not working here.
I think I've got a solution.
All right.
Did it again.
So what we're looking at, have you guys have any experiences with substituting or eliminating your hazards? Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, let's watch the video.
Ladders are simple, right? But falls are the leading cause of death in construction. 1/4 are from ladders. This is the site where a 33-year-old worker died. Fatal falls happen even from heights of less than 6 feet. It was a simple task, washing windows. The worker took a 5-gallon bucket of cleaning solution to the top of the ladder, climbed the ladder with tools, then turned facing the window, using the heels of his work boots to balance himself near the ladder's top rung. The force of the worker's action on the top-heavy ladder caused it to tip over. The foreman from a different company heard the crash and called 911. When EMS arrived minutes later, the worker was unresponsive and having seizures. He was taken to a hospital where he died 14 hours later. This death could have been prevented. The company should have provided hands-on training so workers know how to work safely. Second, the company should have had a written safety program that they enforce to avoid unsafe practices, like not placing heavy items on the top or side of a ladder, never working from the top 2 rungs, never overreaching or leaning, and to always work facing the step ladder and maintain 3 points of contact when climbing. But the best solution is to eliminate use of a ladder entirely. The company could have provided tools like extender poles or a personal lift. This tragedy doesn't have to happen to you or a coworker. Use what you've just learned. Then you can go home safe.
So yeah, I like that video because it shows a really good example of how to eliminate those types of hazards. Let's see here. All right, let's talk about engineering controls. Okay, so this is the most common one that we see out in construction for fall protection. So first off, do you guys know when we were required to have fall protection in a construction site? At what height? Does anybody know? So I'm hearing 3 feet. Any other guesses or answers? 6? Okay, so 6 is the right answer. So in construction, which is like remodels, anytime we're tearing in or building anything, that's considered construction, and there's different rules. Okay, and it's 6 feet that we need to have fall protection. In general industry, right, which is like maintaining buildings and working on top when we're not doing any construction, is actually 4 feet is when we're required to have fall protection. Okay, and so a great engineering control is guarding. Okay, so handrails, mid rail, and a toe board, so we're not kicking tools off. Okay, so it's preventing and separating the fall hazard from the employees. You could also use some distance as far as keeping people away from the areas, things like that. If we have types of machines, right, if we have any type of saws, machine guarding is required as well. And that's an example of engineering control. Another type of engineering control would be like if we have people that are having to lift heavy equipment and other things, we could have like a forklift that would lift, or could have a hand cart or some other tool so that people aren't having to do it by hand, right? So that's another example of engineering controls. Administrative controls. So a few examples of this are signage. So putting up signs, hey, warning, you need hearing protection in this area, head protection. Safety training, and training in general is an administrative control. So we're training our employees to make sure that they can recognize those hazards that we're talking about. Policy procedures, all those things are administrative controls. And then worker rotation. So if they're doing something where they're being exposed to like silica, for example, in the construction industry, or loud noises, we could have rotations where they're only working in that area for a certain amount of time, and they're getting rotated out so they're not being overexposed. Okay, it doesn't work with things like asbestos or things that are carcinogens, right? Because now we're just exposing more people to that hazard. But things that like heavy lifting, ergonomic type issues, that's a good control, is worker rotation. And then once again, the least effective control is the personal protective equipment. Let's talk about when PPE might be required. Okay, so when would we want to wear hard hats? When is that required? What are the hazards that have to exist? Yeah, so falling or flying objects, right? Yeah, so it's right on there, right? So anytime we have falling or flying objects, we're going to want to wear head protection. Any other time that you guys make your employees wear it? Yeah, anytime there's objects overhead where people could drop tools, maybe. Say again?
Backhoe bucket.
Backhoe bucket, yeah, absolutely. So where they can get hit by the backhoe. Yes, sir.
When it's legally required.
When it's legally required? Flagging?
A stop sign, but you wouldn't think you have to wear a hard hat because the state requires.
Yeah, that's a great example. So when it's required, maybe it's not, you wouldn't think it would be required, but yep. So flagging, great. Any other times? Yeah, so anytime we're dealing with electrical hazard or arc, flash hazards, we want to be wearing it and make sure that's properly rated. Yep. Any other times? So if there's a chance that you could bump your head as well, then you have to wear your hard hat. Okay, eye protection, anytime there's flying objects. A lot of times if there's sparks, you're going to want some sort of face shield, and you're supposed to still be wearing your eye protection as well. So sometimes you might have to double up. Hearing protection, when are we required to wear hearing protection? Anybody know how many decibels it has to be? Somebody saying 80? 80? Okay, so it's 85 decibels. If they're being exposed to 85 decibels over an 8-hour time period, an average of 85, they're supposed to be enrolled in a hearing conservation program. So you need to have a written program. They're supposed to have hearing protection available. And then at 90, legally, they have to have that hearing protection in, okay? Some of the other things you have to do is you have to actually test your employees' hearing every year to make sure that your hearing conservation program is actually working, okay? So 85 decibels. There's a good app on, if you just look it up, it's the NIOSH hearing app. It actually is kind of, you can do some noise monitoring with that, kind of a general rule of thumb. Or if you wanted to have an outside consultant like a WCF Insurance SS consultants, we actually do that for free. Could come out and do some noise monitoring for you guys if you're interested in that. So it's just the NIOSH, I think hearing conservation app or noise. So NIOSH noise, that should get you the correct app, and it'll tell you how many decibels. It's kind of give you a roundabout number of what, if it's over 85 and people are being exposed to that noise level for over 8 hours, you know that, yeah, we probably need to get them in hearing protection. So yeah, great question. All right, reflective clothing. Anytime you're around heavy equipment where it's going to be hard to be seen, you should be wearing high visibility clothing, reflective clothing, steel toe boots. If there's a chance that something could roll or fall in somebody's feet, we want to have safety toe shoes or steel toe boots. And then fall protection systems can be used as well as other type. Because once again, this is PPE. This is the last resort. If you do guarding or something else, you want to use it. So it's important that we plan, as was mentioned, the most effective controls are elimination and substitution. And so if we can plan ahead of time and have those things in place, it's going to be a lot better. It's difficult to implement something in mid-project sometimes, right? Because we don't have the budget for it. It's a lot better to have those things already figured out. And so this is where we come into our pre-task planning. And so there's a lot of tools that are very similar to this. Risk assessments was mentioned in the previous discussion. Job safety analysis, job hazard analysis. This is very similar to that. In construction, they call it pre-task planning. And the big thing with this is that you're doing it a little bit more often, and it's supposed to be almost like daily, because the construction site is constantly changing, right? And so we want to make sure that we are notifying our employees of what the hazards are, what are the tasks that are supposed to be performed today, and get those controls in place. The main goals of it is to get everybody on the same page, right? To make sure the supervisors and the workers are all on the same page. You're supposed to promote two-way discussion on what's going on. And ultimately, it's identify those hazards and then control and minimize the risk as we go throughout the day. So this is the first step in forming a pre-task plan. And so it's really just going through, hey, what are we doing today? What are the things step by step, what we're working on? It's a good idea just with any of these things that we're recording this. Some companies, a lot of like Leighton Construction and other large construction companies actually have like a form that they fill out. At WCF Insurance, we have kind of a little form that we can provide you with. It's just kind of a checklist that you can go through looking at, hey, what are the hazards and what are the controls we can put in place. You could also be inspecting your blueprints if you're looking at that. If you're doing like a remodel, it'd be a good idea to look at your asbestos inspection plan, surveys, mold, things like that during these meetings. So you can look at and see what has asbestos, what doesn't, things like that, okay? And once again, it should be recorded, gives you an opportunity to prove like, hey, we're actually looking at the hazards and we're looking at controls for them. So this is an example of our pre-task booklet that we have at WCF Insurance. So if you can kind of see, it's kind of hard to see, but you can look at, there's permits obtained. Have we done a job hazard analysis? Has it been reviewed? Do we have lockout tagout plan? Is there any PPE requirements? Are there any trainings that's required? Ladders, things like that. Just to give people something to look at so they can remember what all the hazards are. The next step after we've listed all our tasks for the day is we want to identify the hazards for each of these steps. Okay, and then talk about it, discuss these things. For those individuals that may not have as much experience, we want those ones that have more experience to share what's happened before in the past, how people have been injured doing this in the past, right? And when we're looking at possible risks, we want to look at the materials, we want to look at the environment. Is there weather-related injuries that could occur? Are there equipment, hazardous equipment that we're using? And go through each scenario. And then we need to talk about controls, okay? What needs to happen to prevent people from getting injured? Once again, having a nice form where it has, tasks. It's almost like a job hazard analysis for those that are familiar with those. Putting your hazards and then having your controls. What are we going to do? And having an assignment. Okay, you're going to be in charge of this, making sure everybody has this. Okay, they should be as specific as possible, and they should reduce or eliminate the hazard. Also could include PPE, tools, other equipment. sometimes, you know, we might not have the right ladder at the job site. Like, oh, shoot, we don't have the right ladder to reach this. You know, then you can assign, hey, somebody go back to the shop, go get the right ladder. Go get the right piece of equipment right now while we're looking at this so that we can get the job done. The last step in doing a pre-task is that we want to look at and review to actually look and see if these controls are working for us, right? And so you need to be doing continual feedback. Somebody's got to go out there and look and see a supervisor and make sure that what we planned is actually working or not, right? And so because of this, there could be multiple times a day that we could be performing one of these pre-task planning. Okay, so if it's not working, hey, we need to do something differently. And so you should be continually improving throughout the day, throughout the project, and don't be afraid to meet again if things aren't working properly. Okay, any questions with that? Yes, sir.
Do you have examples of cities or public entities that are doing this well on a daily or weekly basis?
So I don't have an example of public entities. So I was mostly looking at like construction companies that I work with a lot. And so like Layton Construction, they do this very well. They have a form. It has to be filled out every single day. Like I said, we do provide some, you know, some handouts to help you with that. But yeah, not specifically cities and counties and things that I have examples of, right? But there's other tools that are very similar that organizations are using, right? Like job hazard analysis and risk assessment. And this is just a little bit more fluid, right?
One more thing that will add value and safety. And one of my challenge is how do I make that cultural shift so that they incorporate it into their daily tailgate meetings?
Right. Yeah, and really it's asking for it. Like, okay, give me the proof, right? It's requiring them to turn something in. And if you want them to do daily, that has to be turned in daily, or keep it and then return and turn it in at the end of the week is usually a good way to do it. Incentives, right? What are we incentivizing them to do? If we can get it in so it's part of their normal tasks, like if they have quality things, like a quality checklist, let's just add these safety things to that quality list, if that makes sense. Like you said, integrate it in so it's not safety and everything else. Safety is just all part of the job. Yep, great point. Any other comments or questions? So let's talk about inspections. How do you do in your inspections? What are you guys doing as far as inspections go for job sites in general or construction sites? What do you do? And those online, feel free to chime in if you have any examples.
We got safety teams that will go out and do unannounced visits on sites. You know, they're looking for any hazards beyond PPE. I mean, they'll obviously look at that, but then they'll look at basically look at the JSAs, make sure that they completed them, and make sure that, you know, the things that are in place should be in place. And so, I mean, Dustin mentioned it earlier, everybody in South Jordan's a risk manager, so everybody's watching each other and, you know, keeping an eye on hazards, and nobody's afraid to pipe up. Nobody's afraid to mention to anybody else. Doesn't matter how, you know, whether you're a tenured employee or whether you're just starting out. Everybody will speak up.
Yeah, so that's what you really want, right? Is to have develop that culture where everybody is watching out for each other, right? That we're not letting somebody do something stupid and get themselves hurt. And it really, if you can, you do want to have, you know, maybe a safety group do it, but also just having it, everybody watch out for each other is ultimately the the safety culture that you want, right? Where we're watching out for each other. We're not tattling on each other, right? But it's more of, hey, we want to make sure that we're helping each other. So yeah, depending on the company, some people have them like, you know, monthly, weekly inspections. They try to go out to all the job sites. They come and do a walkthrough. Some people have checklists. I've seen individuals have checklists as they track things online, and so that they can, you know, show that they've actually looked at those things. When we do inspections as WCF Insurance, as a safety consultant, we'll just come and we're looking around for whatever could cause people to get hurt, right? Because sometimes checklists, you get so focused on those things that you're not really paying attention to what's actually happening, what can get people hurt. But both ways are appropriate. You should record them in some way once you do find a hazard, and hopefully you're providing that feedback to the supervisor, to the guys, letting them know, hey, this is what you need to do to fix it, and let's get it fixed.
Darren Spencer works with a lot of municipalities, and he comes out from WCF, and on a quarterly basis, he'll come out and we'll do the same thing as far as surprise.
Great.
I don't know that I want to call it a, you know.
It's unannounced.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, as he mentioned, safety consultant comes out, and for those that don't have your safety consultant, so WCF Insurance, if you're with us, we can come out and help you guys do those inspections. So if you don't feel like you feel comfortable or know what you're looking for, we'd be happy to come out with you and go walk through those things together, these sites, and we can start pointing out hazards and walk through that with you. Okay. So why do inspections? Help identify, once again, hazards. We're looking for things, you know, things that might not be in this, because we're like in a meeting, right? We can talk about it all we want. We say, hey, we need to make sure we're wearing eye protection. But then when we get out there, are we actually doing it? Are we actually following the things that we talked about? And unless you get out there, you know, you're not going to be able to figure that out from an office desk. Okay. I want to verify the effectiveness of the controls that we put in place. They should be routine, whatever that means. So weekly, daily, monthly. And if you can get in everyday employees, supervisors, and safety all involved in this, you're going to be better off. So what are we looking for in inspections? So this is the focus 4, or the fatal 4, as OSHA says, it calls it sometimes. So these are the 4 main ways that you can get killed out on a construction site. Okay, there's definitely a lot more than these, but I just wanted to review this real quickly. So falls, caught in between, or caught in something, being struck by something, or electrocution are the 4 main ways that you can die on a construction site. Okay, so falls, number 1 cause construction fatalities. The video mentioned this as well. And then fall from ladders, like 25% of fall deaths come from ladders. So ladders are very dangerous. Falls in general are very dangerous. So any type of fall hazard we need to take very seriously when we're coming out and looking at inspections. Okay. So here's a few examples of things that we might have. Any type of hole, anything that's more than just 2 inches and its smallest side is considered a hole to OSHA. So there needs to be a covering for that. Okay, hole coverings, they need to be labeled, they need to be secured so people can't take them off, or guarding, right, we can put in place. Skylights is a really good example of this where people usually miss. Okay, skylight is considered a hole. Piece of glass or plastic is not considered guarding. You can sit on that, people sit on those things or step in them when there's snow on the ground or on the roof and they fall through them. It happens quite often, okay? Fall protection in place. So the fall protection needs to be at least 42 inches high, needs to have a mid rail and a toe board so you can't kick equipment off. So 42 inches plus or minus 3 inches. So the picture on the right, this is an example where somebody didn't, it fell down, right? So we need to be inspecting these things, make sure that the fall protection in place. Guardrails need to be able to withstand at least 200 pounds of pressure in any direction, okay? And some of these numbers, if you want more of them, definitely, I'll put my email. And if you have specific questions about certain things, you can ask and I can respond to those. Working on ladders, once again, the picture on the right, we should need to always be facing the ladders. You can never straddle it. If we're working in places where there's more than a 4 foot, 6 feet fall, we want to have fall protection in place. Caught in betweens. So this is just a few examples working on equipment, right? So if we have maintenance personnel, anytime we have raised equipment where there's hydraulics involved, we want to make sure that those areas are blocked off so people can't get hurt, right? If we're working around other heavy equipment, there's swings, right? With forklifts, cranes, excavators, there's blind spots where there's moving equipment where people can get hit and caught in between that equipment. When we're looking at tools, we want to make sure guarding is in place. So this is a table saw that's missing a guard. Okay, we're working around where there's forklifts or other raised equipment. We want to make sure nobody's ever working underneath and watching out when, especially when they're ground guarding, because this equipment can fail and we can have rollovers. Struck by injuries. So anytime there's something that's raised up and we're using cranes, nobody should be working under raised loads. When we're storing equipment, so the picture on the right, we should always be storing tools and materials at least 6 feet away from holes or other areas where things can fall off. So the picture on the right, there's a bunch of boards, right, that are right by an area where they could fall down and hurt individuals. Okay, so we got to be looking for these types of things so individuals aren't going to get injured. Other struck by hazards, so people working below, okay, where there's a possibility that we could be dropping tools. Okay, does anybody know what's happening on the picture on the left? What, nail guns? Yep. And also there's also powder actuated tools, right? Where they're actually using, or power actuated tools, where it's almost like a 22 cartridge that they use to shoot in. We've had fatalities where they could shoot right through the wall. And so we want to make sure that we're watching and paying attention to where people are nailing, right? Because we have had those go through the wall and hit people in the forehead and kill them, right? Electrocution. When I'm looking for things that could cause electrocution or shock, we're looking for open panels, we're looking for loose wires. If we're working around power lines, right? What are the controls for these? We can put up signage and let people know. We want to make sure that we're using the correct ladders. We're not using anything that can be conductive, metal ladders, things like that. Other things, as I mentioned, loose wires, missing the grounding prong on the plug itself. Are there any other things that you guys have seen as real quick? Is there anything else that you guys see on your sites that you're worried about? Trench safety, yeah. Okay, making sure that it's properly shored or there's barriers in place, right? Yep, absolutely. That's a big one that people, really anytime they're digging up a road, there needs to be something in place because it's already been disturbed. I've had individuals say like, oh no, this is class A, this doesn't need anything. But anytime it's been disturbed once, it automatically is going to be a class C. Okay, so anytime we're digging up a road, we need to have barriers in place. That's a great example. Anything else? Yes. Traffic control. Yep, absolutely. So make sure that we have the right PPE and barriers. Yes, sir.
Someone online is asking about how do you prevent safety fatigue?
Safety fatigue, because they get tired of safety.
Do you get lax with it?
Yeah. So it's just developing that. There's incentive programs that people do, right? Is that they incentivize doing proactive things, right? So if we're doing all our training, we're doing our inspections, that we're doing like a pizza party every once in a while, or there's giving out gifts, or there's gift cards, or there's a raffle. So there's things like that you can do. It's just part of the job, right? And so trying to develop that culture, like this is the way we do it. We do it the right way every time. And you can make it fun, right? It doesn't have to be boring safety training. It could be something interactive. You can include things like Kahoot and other things so that people aren't getting tired of it, right? If we go in there and we're always just getting after people and they're always getting in trouble if they report of injury, nobody likes that type of person. Nobody likes the police. It's better to be more collaborative. We're here to help. We want these people to get home. And so hopefully they understand that we're doing this for their own safety and it's not just we're there to yell at them or get them in trouble. That should never be the purpose of an inspection. It should all be about finding the solution and not finding blame. Great question. Anything else?
Yeah. How often should you replace PPE?
Yeah, so it depends. So certain types of gloves and stuff, right? You're gonna have holes. Respirators, their cartridges, they have change out schedules. And usually if it starts to get hard to breathe, it comes down to like the manufacturer's instructions. And so that's where I would refer you to. So go to the user manual of that PPE. With safety glasses, usually it's when they get so scratched up you can't see at them anymore. Okay. Hard hats, you have 5 years after you start wearing them or if they've been damaged or have been involved with something falling on it. But refer to your user manual or manufacturer's instructions. It'll actually tell you how often you're supposed to switch those out. And for like the webbing inside the hard hat, it's usually every 2 or 3 years, just depending on how well it is. So yeah, great question.
Yeah, got one more.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the best way to review injuries and near misses?
Yeah, so reviewing injuries and near misses, the best way to do that, I would do it as a committee. If you have like a risk committee or a safety committee, review those as a group. After an investigation's been done, gather all the information beforehand, bring it together as a group, and we're going to try to figure out what the best, what happened. And so you can do root cause analysis. Like there's 5 whys, if you're familiar with that, asking why did this happen? Why? I can definitely give you some more resources on that. If you guys can, send me an email or send me a text, and I can give you definitely some more resources on any of those things. So jday@wcf.com, and then my phone number is there as well. I am out of time, but I do want to do another Kahoot just as a quick review. Let's see here. So go ahead and go to kahoot.it. Or you can scan the QR code, those that like to use that. And then the PIN number is 510-8842. So 510-8842. Any other questions while we're waiting? Yes, sir.
We've had several of our employees that just get back injuries. Because they throw their back out, from twisting a certain way or stepping into a truck, stepping out of the truck. What do you do with those kinds of things?
Yeah, so for things like back injuries, strains, sprains, so there are companies that do like pre-employee assessments, so you can actually see if people have the physical capacity to do the job. So there's that. There's physical therapists that you could usually send them to, so they'll give them exercises to strengthen those muscles. And some things like that, they're not OSHA recordable, right? Because it doesn't involve prescriptions and things like that. So there are those types of options. Regular stretching, like in manufacturing, we have people, what they do is before their shift, they all stretch together. The supervisor has stretches that they all do together, and then throughout the day they do that. And then send them to the doctor. You should encourage people to report things as soon as possible, and then go get it checked out. And most of the time, it's just they need rest. They need to be drinking more water, right? But sometimes it gets escalated and they need, back surgeries and stuff. And so what we're trying to do is prevent those types of things where it gets so bad where they're not getting the rest, and then they injure it so bad that they end up having to get surgery, and then they're out for like a month, right? And so, yeah, those preventative things are going to be the best. Encouraging people to work out, eat healthily, get the water they need. Once again, we can give you a bunch of resources if you want to reach out for those types of things. All right, let's go ahead and start. They're not required for verbal praise, but they are required to provide training. They should have a workplace free of known hazards, and they should pay for the PPE. Absolutely. Okay, looks like Chandler's got the lead. What is the most effective control? See what you guys remember. All right, looks like most people got that one. So elimination is the most effective control, right? Administrative control is a little bit lower down. We still probably want to do a mix of those, right? Because it's more plausible, but okay, looks like Keenan is taking the lead. Chandler's still in second. True or false? The purpose of pre-task planning is to control or minimize risk. True or false? This one's super quick. Okay, good job. Most everybody got that. That's true. Whole purpose of it is to control and minimize risk. Okay, Keenan has still got the lead, and so does Chandler's number two. Say again? Yep. What is the most deadly of the focus 4 hazards? All right, this falls. So yeah, once again, falls are the most deadly of all those 4 things that we talked about. More people die in falls than any other type of hazard. And then I'd probably say in general industry, it's vehicle accidents, right? Okay, Chandler takes the lead. Okay, what's my favorite movie? Do you guys remember this one? There's some tricky ones in there, right? Dang it. Okay, so the original trilogy. So some people think the Star Wars episodes 1 through 3. Those, please let me know if you have any questions. And for the third place, where were they here? Me? I think they might be online. Yep, choose what you want. I guess you have to be present to win. If you want to contact me, I'll get you a prize. Just email me and let me know who you are. All right, well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.